Welcome, dear listeners, dear viewers. This is John Consemulder. Normally, I would say of Healing Sound Movement Television. Also, of course, because the channel is still available and we will be posting many new material on that channel as well. But the new channel we have installed for, let's say consciousness and transformation is called the Human Condition. So the Human Condition TV. And you can see that, I think it's all a lot of numbers now, but after a month you will see the channel name. youtube.com/the human condition, and of course we will also post that. Also check the Healing Sound Movement on YouTube channel, healingsoundmovement.com/news. And if you want to see more personal or activist comments, you can also check facebook.com/John Consemulder, which is me, of course. And today is quite an interesting day because on the new channel we had David Icke and Drunvalo Melchizedek. And I think that the third other person that should be on the channel, of course, in the number 3 of the top 10 that's not there yet, is Ole Dammegard. If he would live in Spanish, I would say Ole, but that's a joke he probably heard too much. So it's Ole Dammegard. And his website, let me mention that right away, is lightonconspiracies.com. So I'm going to look a little bit above the camera now because I have a very high screen. So I'll get some neck pain, but it will be worth it in the end. So let me welcome you, Ole, to this channel. Let's start for the general listeners and the general viewers. What's your idea of what a conspiracy, and we'll go in depth a little bit later, but what a conspiracy actually is, what people think that a conspiracy is, and how it feels it's been a little bit abuse, that term, to actually block real, not fake news, but real news information. So what's your view on conspiracy?
Conspiracy, the word itself means to breathe together. It's actually a beautiful word, but it has, in modern times, I don't know when it started, but it has become a term that means when 2 and more people are involved in planning or acting out criminal actions or with criminal intention. So there are conspiracies everywhere. In American courts, you would hear conspiracy to fraud, conspiracy to that, conspiracy to many different ways, areas when it comes to criminal activity. But after the JFK assassination, there was the CIA was extremely concerned because since they were involved in the assassination, they did not want people to get too close and too nosy. So they came up in '67 with a term called conspiracy theorist or conspiracy theory. And the reason for that was to add an element of doubt into the whole discussion, so that if someone like myself, for instance, would become too nosy, they could just throw this out there. Oh, it's just a conspiracy theory, or he's just a conspiracy theorist, meaning on with the tinfoil hat, and then you could just make a joke or disregard. And they have weaponized that word over the decades, where this has become like, if I say conspiracy, I tell you, your brain will say theory. It's that more or less everyone is saying it, except like me. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not interested in theories. I'm a conspiracy researcher or conspiracy exposer or conspiracy fact finder. That is more the term that I would feel comfortable with.
Mm-hmm. How does this relate to the military's use of the word and the principle plausible deniability? Because it looks to me as if they've used that process to, in a way, almost mind control our perception of what true facts actually might be.
The one that controls the information and controls the narrative of a situation is the one that is in charge. And so information flow is extremely important in all kinds of operations, military, black ops, and other conspiracies. So they put a main focus on carrying out the operation, but also being in control of the key people involved, including patsies, the investigation, or the autopsy, the doctors, the media people, and the mainstream media outflow. All of these are extremely important elements of it. So plausible denial is also a term where you get yourself in a situation, sort of, maybe I planned this assassination in great detail, and just the day when it happens, I go on vacation to Bermudas. And then when it happens, I'm like, well, I was on Bermuda, so you can't blame me. So there's this use, and the military use it. It's built in the whole system when you carry out these operations. So you need to become aware of that when you dig into these things. That there will be a massive part, if it's carried out professionally, of deception and smoke screens and fog and all red herrings pointing all over the place. One of the things they do as well is that if it's on a bigger type of political assassination or bigger operation with a bigger budget and so on, they sometimes add different layers of the conspiracy so that you can have several teams on the ground at the same time, but these teams are not even aware of each other. But that means that if someone like me comes in and starts digging into it, I will find more than one team there, but I will think that they're there for the same reason. And then when I start looking into it, it will just point all over the place, But this is part of the deception, to get rid of people like myself. It's like if you have a bloodhound following you or a dog tracker or whatever, you throw out pieces of meat in different directions, to just divert the attention. That's the whole idea.
Yes, diversion, but you also talked a little bit about what the military, I believe, calls compartmentalization. Is that the English correct word?
Compartmentalization, yeah.
That's a better pronunciation, thank you. Yeah.
It is what they call a need-to-know chain. That is also for the security of the people carrying it out. Because if you know too much, you become a possible threat. And then you could be eliminated. So everyone involved in operations like that are very aware of not asking questions, just do their task. And often, if it's a hit team or so, they don't even know the identity of the target. They just know, man in his 50s, early 50s, blue shirt, red hat, that type of thing. And then you have one shooter, one spotter, triangular fire, multiple escape cars. And they just do their job, boom, 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 and take him out. And then they're transported out super quick before the whole iron grid of investigation comes in. They wait until the professional killers are out, and then boom, they lock down the place and start adding, clearing up the evidence with a forensic team that comes in, totally corrupt most of the time. That clears up the real evidence, and then these people place the evidence that will then point in whatever direction the operation is meant to take, meaning at a patsy that they have prepared for a long time. That has nothing to do with it.
It sounds like, I think there's a famous book, The Art of War, with all the deception in it. It's a complete playbook here. But next question I think would be interesting to ask you. We met like 6 years ago, and until this point, except me, of course, I haven't met a guy who was that loving, friendly, gentle, meditative, and also was able to try to put, light on the conspiracies, your website, lighttheconspiracies.com, and be able to assist in transformation for a better and more healthy world. Because I've met many figures in the field, and some have almost like become, let me be not subtle here, possessed by the darkness they are investigating. So my double question would be, how did this investigation start for you? Why did you get involved into this field? And how do you manage to get all this? Because some people say, where attention goes, or what is it? Where attention flows, energy goes where attention flows. So if that's the case, how do you just rub this information off as if it's nothing, as if we're talking about coffee? I know you're able to do that because we filmed your presentations, and maybe later we can discuss if we can share some parts of that. But how did you start with this field of research, and how did it involve you or change you as a person, if it did? You have 2 hours to answer this question.
I was just going to say, okay, that was more than one. And okay, so I came to this earth with a task, I believe. I was a quite a pure in soul that came down here, and with the task of trying to understand evil. What is it? Why is it done? Why are people doing these things? And I was life was generous enough to put me through lots of traumas and horrors things and difficulties, making me more and more compassionate about people's suffering, so that I could get a better empathy with people in tricky situations. So I think that I've gone through most traumas that is in the register. I mean, but in a soft way, many times a soft way, compared to, I mean, when I hear about some people's it's incredible what they with satanic rituals and stuff like that. I mean, I can't even imagine. But I've had like a soft version of most of the things, including murders in the family and abuse and you name it. But this has prepared me, I believe, that this was not just a coincidence. I was not aware of it. I'm still not aware of my real task. I'm growing into it, and I thought it was so beautiful when you were talking about the caterpillar turning into a butterfly.
Yeah.
Just a few minutes ago, because that is exactly it. And this is exactly where I think I are at this point in history with this incredible situation around this alleged virus called Corona, where we are at a point where we don't understand what is it to become, how do you feel when you're a butterfly? If you're a caterpillar, when you can't even move, like with 2.5 kilometers per year, and then you're talking about a butterfly that can just take off and have all of these colors and can see so far and so long. We have no idea what it even feels like, and I think this is the transformation that we are going through. There's a ritual death going on, and there will be a beautiful birth coming, I believe. I hope so. Otherwise, we're going straight down the drain. But to reverse, I was born into a family where my father was. My whole family was involved in the Danish resistance movement against the Nazi occupation. So I grew up with all of these stories about how important it is to stand up for what is true and right, even though you're the minority of one. And it later turned out that it seems like my whole family, our neighbors, our friends, everyone was involved in the Danish part of Gladio, the Stay Behind movement that was born. I've only found out this very recently, just a year or two ago, that my whole life has been built on a lie, a double life that I was not aware of. The reason we moved from Denmark to Sweden, all of it was due to Gladio. And
how come you were protected from that, by the way? So you only found out later. You weren't involved in this, but other
no, I was a
members
child.
were.
I was a child, but I'm finding out more and more that it even seems like my parents did not meet in love, but was sort of like a constructed couple.
Like arranged.
And arranged with all Gladio strategy, with the children as a nice front, so, and no, the more I find out, my father died in 92, and well, it doesn't really matter, but a year ago or 2 years ago, I had this very, very powerful dream. I was with him when he died, and the only thing he had on him, I mean, he was in his hospital bed, more or less naked and with his ring, and that was the ring was the only thing I wanted from him after he passed. And then I had this dream about 2 years ago where he spoke to me and he said, the key is in the ring, the key is in the ring. So I woke up like, what? The key is in the ring, the key. I didn't get it at all. So I found the ring again and started looking at it, and it's a US Navy ring. How does a Danish citizen get a US Air Force ring? How does he do that? And also the stone that was in it was an amethyst, and that color, I've looked in the yearbooks about these rings, symbolizes aristocracy or royalty. So, and that officially has nothing to do with my family. We come from farmers and stuff, you know, not at all. Like, so I started digging into it also because there's so many things in when I grew up that didn't match up, that did not make sense. And you got someone in the background crawling over the floor.
Ishaya, you can come out now. It's my daughter. He just pointed out you are here, so now you can better wave to at least wave to the people. She's saying
wave
no.
To the people. But this is the thing, you know, when I start to notice details, like something was moving in the background, you know, these type of things, I think that without understanding it, I was trained in a world of deception and lies, because that was in my family. It was also for safety. We were not allowed to know things that was going on, you know. So, but I felt these things. I was not aware, but I could feel I'm not being told the whole truth. There's something going on here. You know, I come into a room, there's all of these emotions going on. People get quiet, they look strange, but it was normal. But I think these things prepared me for what was ahead. And then around 1980, I was working as a journalist, and I saw the Zapruder film for the very first time, which is the film where you see the assassination of JFK, where, I mean, it takes like about 32 seconds for you to see that something is totally wrong because of the direction his head is thrown when he was hit by the last bullet. I mean, that's a dead giveaway that you have had a shooter somewhere to the right and in front of him, not up and behind, which would have caused a totally different thing. So at that point, I believed I lived in a perfect country, you know, perfect democracy. I grew up in Sweden. We moved from Denmark to Sweden when I was 8. And I trusted the police. I trusted the government. There was no corruption. There was everybody was law abiding. You know, I thought I live that was what we were being told. Like most people are in most countries also, that this country, whoa, fantastic. And then this happened, and I was like, what the hell? How is it possible that these heavyweight journalists and, you know, documentary makers and so on, you know, could buy into a thing that you can see right away, there's something wrong here. I mean, this doesn't match up. And that started me down this very, very long road that I had no idea that I got myself into, where I got almost obsessed with first the JFK assassination, then Robert Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Abraham Lincoln, and then the Swedish Prime Minister Olof Palme is said to have been shot in February 1986.
You wrote a book about that, I believe.
Yeah, but that is with the connection of all of these. It's called Coup d'etat in slow motion. It's almost 1,000 pages, and it took me 12 years of research and writing to get that thing. I tell you, it is it's a major part of my life that is put into that one. Many people have died because of this information, have put their careers, and what I've done is I've put the whole thing together because it was so much than just my research. I looked up everyone that had been working on it in Sweden at that time and learned from them. So it got me into the area of assassinations, and by the way,
did you see my T-shirt? I put it on for you. I'm not sure if you can see it.
I can't see. Whoa.
Assassin's Creed.
No. Well,
it's kidding. I had to find a T-shirt to be at least a little bit presentable for you this morning, and I found this one. So now you're talking about assassination, but go on.
You know what? It got me into the world of like I said, to start with, I didn't understand that these things had any kind of connection. I thought they were totally separate incidents or events, but very changing when it came to world history. And then the more I looked into it, because I became almost obsessed, I traveled to England to try and find books and producers. I went to the US. I was because it was before the internet. And then around with the Palme assassination, I spent, I don't know how many thousands of hours in dusty old cellars with documents or newspaper archives, or also tracking down people, because it became very clear after a while that the Swedish assassination was following a very similar template than the other ones, which was very strange to me, because how is that possible? Because over the first 4 or 5 years when I was digging into this in the early 80s, I started more and more seeing that it was like these assassinations were following like a bullet point list. And I tracked that back. I think it was the old Romans that came up with these templates on how to get rid of somebody in a political situation or position.
So there's like a conspiracy blueprint in a way you found out.
That's a very precise assassination blueprint, because conspiracies can be so much more.
Yeah, of course.
But a very, very good way of putting it. So like an assassination blueprint, exactly. And when I started seeing how the old Romans did it, I thought, is it really possible that this has been going on? But it was like they fine-tuned these different methods, in several different areas. Also, when it came to controlling the masses and deception, and the Romans were incredible. And so I started seeing how the Romans did it, and then I took that blueprint and compared it to these top political assassination, and it fitted right in. So I was like, whoa, this is major, because I've never seen anyone else do that. I've only seen that, I've hardly ever seen anyone connect like JFK and Martin Luther King. They're totally separate, or RFK and Ole Palme and so on. So I started trying to make as detailed a blueprint myself, a bullet point list, like point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is not the identical way they carried out on a street level. The assassination itself can be different, but most of the time it's like if there's if shooting is involved, then you have triangular fire very often, multiple shooters, multiple getaway cars, an investigation that is part of the crime, followed by commissions that are part of the crime. The coroner is totally involved. They use people from the Freemasonic network that are being carried, pulled in. Media is controlled. Same thing. They're key people, not the whole media, but key people in key positions that are then the ones that are reporting the whole thing. And the only thing you need is to control the inner circle. So with a handful of people, you can control that if you are backed up by these dark forces. Anyway, so I did this blueprint from JFK because that was the most advanced one of them all. And I also started writing a book about the JFK assassination. That was my first book, but that was just because for myself to try and understand what happened, because after 50 odd years, we're still confused. It's an absolute masterpiece, that assassination.
Back then already, yeah.
So incredible how they did that one. And then I started seeing that it fitted in very much so with RFK, MLK, boom, 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 boom. And then Olof Palme in Sweden, which was a country on a totally different continent, had nothing to do with the US, had nothing to do with anything, and was officially done by a lone crazy guy, which is the typical patsy they always use. Alone, because then by law they don't need to deal with it as a conspiracy, especially if that person is suicided on location. And crazy, because then there's no need for a motive. He was crazy. He just went up and shot him. That's why they always want lone wolves, lone crazy individuals, or fanatics. Allah Akbar, boom, that's enough for you. And just go on with your life, back to sleep, and thank you and goodbye. That's the modus operandi. So I started seeing the exact same pattern appearing in Sweden. I was like, whoop, hang on a second, this is bizarre. Because I live in this beautiful democracy where no bad stuff happens. So how can these things follow the same thing? So I started predicting by following the blueprint from the other ones, saying if what I'm suspecting is true, then I checked with the other ones, where I think we were at 0.8 or something like that. I said, then this will happen in Sweden. 2 weeks later, that exact thing unfolded in Sweden. I mean, that blew my mind, because that was like the innocence of my childhood, the country I lived in, the everything I believed in was just pulled away from me. You know, like suddenly Sweden was part of the rest of the world, this with massive corruption, where you cannot trust the police, where you cannot do, because then suddenly all of the other things started to fall into place with the key players that was doing this, and I could see exactly the same pattern. So I knew right away, okay, that guy, that guy, that guy, that guy, that guy are in on it. The ones that are there to solve it, these people are in on it, you know. So, and the judges, the people that held the press conferences were in the inner circle. So that was, well, blew my mind, really. It really shook me to the core, in my inner core, because, and so I quit my job and I moved to Stockholm to get into the center of this thing, because this was a world historical event that most people don't even are aware of. It's the most expensive murder investigation in the history of the world. It's about 2 billion Swedish krona now that has been poured down this rabbit hole, or this sewage opening, finding absolutely nothing, because they're there to cover the whole thing up. That's why. So you have $2 billion going into other black ops, and we're standing there applauding, oh, Swedish police, it's fantastic. They're really doing what they're not. This is what they can get from me and nothing else. So I moved up to Stockholm, and I was guided. I tell you, John, I really felt that I've been guided in my life with divine,
interventions.
Yeah, the chances are like 1 in a trillion. I mean, it just can't. Do you know, I was sitting, I didn't know anyone in Stockholm at all. I moved up there. On the way there, I was driven by a friend. He gets a phone call. He's invited to a birthday party. The friend my friend says, can Ole, my friend from Toronto, can he come as well? Yeah, for sure. We go to the party. Don't know anyone. There's a girl sitting crying in the kitchen, you know, late at night. So I sit down and say, what's going on? Turns out she was a witness to the assassination, but who had been threatened and intimidated and stuff. What are the chances that, you know, and I was the first one she ever told, but it was just the pressure was too much for her. What are the chances that I'm coming up? And it was like that, you know, and I started, I mean, maybe this sounds a bit woo, you know, like tinfoil hatties or new agey, but I started, you know, it was almost like I was giving clues from signs in the street, you know, and numbers on the buses were directing me. And that helped me track down assassins in Sweden. So I started being able to map the whole network of the people involved in this assassination, because it was an international assassination, not Sweden.
By the way, I always joke in synchronicity-wise with this stuff. I always say the cosmos conspires even more than the Illuminati, and that's also the hopeful news. But we'll get there in the end, I think. But please continue.
No, it's amazing. I mean, this divine synchronicity, I love it. I love it. And it was through divine synchronicity that we met as well. I don't know if you're aware of that, but with that, the way Willem and I met up, Willem Felderhof, that was beyond belief. So I can tell you that story in the end of anyway. So and then led to the first Open Mind conference where we met.
Yeah.
So anyway, at that time also it was very scary for me to get into this world, because, you know, I'm not a violent individual, but when you're up suddenly, when you start meeting the beast face to face, and you start seeing the result of people suicided in Sweden, there's quite a few people that have been killed around this assassination, you know, to control the blowback. And and also to start seeing and identifying the people who were part of this thing, who beat up people, that killed people. And I lived out in a suburb, and it was like me and some alcoholics and a bodybuilder. That was about it. It was the end of the road. Just a few kilometers down where I used to run and jog, there was a villa, and one of the people that were involved in the assassination was there. He lived there with his family. And for me, his name was Leif Tell, or still is. I knew, the more I studied, I became an expert on these people, but without them knowing that I even existed, hopefully, so it was so strange for me to see that someone that can beat someone to death and can take part of an assassination also is a member of a fishing club and has children that I'm sure adores him, that is an animal lover. Do you know, it's like, so for me, it was on so many different levels. Instead of just seeing a monster, I saw someone that I believed in what he was doing. Like this is what I come to terms with, that many of these people, if they're not driven just by greed and money, they believe in what they're doing. They believe that when they assassinate this person, they are helping the nation, or they are getting rid of a threat to national security or whatever. So they believe in it, and they then indirectly comes to see me as a threat, that I would be part of their enemy and something that should be eliminated. And I once spoke to one of them, and I said, how do you see someone like myself? And he said, just like a higher officer in the enemy army, nothing personal, get rid of him.
Just collateral damage in the end.
Yeah, that's it. And so you asked me, how can I deal with these things? The more I've gone into over all of these years, I've been very scared at times, paranoid for a reason, a good reason, I'll tell you that, when you start seeing people die around you.
We have a lyric here, it says, being paranoid doesn't mean nobody's following you. That's exactly your situation.
But I was told by an MI6 agent that the word paranoid has been hijacked, and it actually means the ability to connect dots that other people do not see. That was from an MI6 agent, so I think, call me paranoid, and I will be a proud paranoid person.
Like conspira, which is conspiracy, right?
Exactly. So, where was I? Anyway, this it came to a point where I was in this small little group called the Private Investigators. That was they were ridiculous, or we were making, the media was making absolute jokes of us and ridiculous, and the thing was, these were just concerned citizens, many of them from a quite high position in society before, lawyers, police officers, the chief of the custom office, national custom office, you had the doctors, you had not just on a low level, white hillbilly trash, if you want to say awful stuff like that, but like very. And so what I did at that time, I was very young, and most of them were quite old, and nobody wanted to hear them. Nobody wanted to listen. So when I came and was so interested, oh my God, they were so happy. Someone wants to live. So I spent so many hours with so many of them. It was just a small group of like 10, 12, I think. So I spent so many hours in their houses, in their homes, going through all the documentation they had gathered, all the evidence, and listening, learning from these people, learning. At that point, I had no idea that it would become a book. I was just trying to solve this puzzle, and also I was at a point where I was going through quite a deep depression, I think, where when you get into these dark areas, it gets very scary, and also I moved to Stockholm. I used to be someone when I was a journalist in the small city where I lived. I mean, I was in a rock band as well for many years. So I was someone. Then I moved to Stockholm, and I was absolutely no one. I mean, nobody's but Stockholm and Sweden. It's not an easy country to come in. If you come as an outsider, you are not let in. You know, if you're not very pushy and you're good at standing and talking, you know, and take the first step. I'm awful at these things. I'm not good at it at all. I'm not good hanging out in a bar, just starting to talk to strangers if they don't speak to me. You know, so I became more and more isolated, more and more depressed also. And I was in love with a girl that didn't want me. That didn't help either. So it ended up with, I believe that this assassination with Ole Palme was my lifeline. It was a mystery that never ended, and it gave me a reason to get out of bed. You know, so I was recording. I was a recording artist at the time, or trying to work my way in as a studio musician in Stockholm. Not easy, and so
we have a studio here, so you're welcome anytime.
Oh, okay. Thank you, John. No, so it's yeah, I've recorded 2 solo albums that you can find them on Spotify or on my website. So one of them called is From Prison to Paradise. So
from butterfly
anyway,
to
so it was these 2 things that kept me sort of going, and it was really bad, John. I tell you, it was like, I remember one time I was so desperate just to be among people, and I had applied for jobs, couldn't get them. So one day I walked into a cafeteria and I said, please, I'll work for free if I can just be here around you. Of course they said no, but it was that bad. And I also sat one time with a rifle in my mouth, loaded, but not to kill myself, but to choose life, to make a decision. Because when you sit there with a loaded gun and the hand on the trigger, I mean, this little motion will make the difference of me being here or being somewhere else. And it's quite a strong experience. So I there decided, yep, I want to stay here. And from then on, after that also I went into the bathroom. I shaved off my hair because there's so much toxin that gets gathered in the hair. I could feel it. You can see that at autopsies, when they check for poison and so on, they check the hair. And so I thought, okay, fine. I shaved the whole thing off and decided I want to live. And that was sort of the upgoing. So it's been like a roller coaster. It's like people say, how can you be so calm? Well, I tell you, it has not been an easy ride to come to this. But it's like any type of surfer or whatever. You start with small waves, and to be able to manage the big waves, you have to go through absolute hell, and I call it boot camp. And then in the end, you can surf the big waves as well.
But now you also have become like a frame of reference, because like you said before, because of the, well, let's put them traumas or the conditioning or whatever happened in your life, which was bad as a young child, of course, as an experience, became like an experience that other people do not have. So you have a frame of reference. I always say, if you have a frame of reference here and you want to compare it with this one, you can't resonate with it because you don't even know this one exists until you had the transformation from caterpillar to butterfly, and there's the chaos without DNA in the middle. So that's a transformation start, like your life story. And then you come here, and then you're at this frame of reference, and then you look down and you see, oh, that's why, right? And things fall in its place. The puzzle creates itself, by the way. So
it's super interesting. And this is what I've learned also, just like you say, when you're in the situation, you don't know what you're in. It's only afterwards when you look back or you look down, you see, now I get it. So this is why I don't try to overthink stuff. My head is quite empty. There's not a lot of chaos going on in there, because it's just like one step at a time. Be here and now. Try and be just focused and do the best. Follow your heart. Act in love with that intention. And then maybe I'm dead in 1 minute, who knows? Or I'm on the way to become a butterfly. I really feel that we are in this extreme transition right now, where it's either going totally down the drain, as mentioned before, new world order, wet dream on steroids, or we're going to transform into something amazing. And my heart says it's the latter one. I'm super optimistic, tired though, but super optimistic, and I can't wait. What I think is going to happen, and I think it's going to happen very soon, is, this is my hope at least, that duality will suddenly dissolve, and we will go through a few days of confusion, the 3 day of darkness, and then on the other side there will be this feeling of oneness, where we will stop fighting each other, where we will stop seeing each other as enemies or separate entities, but that we will join together and just lift this world.
Okay.
That is.
Let's go in there with a little bit more synchronicity, because I know you love synchronicities. I talked to David Icke, as you know, and also Drunvalo Melchizedek, the first two outlets on the new The Human Condition from Caterpillar to Butterfly channel. But then I read this book. I'm not sure if you can see it. Well, you can see it like this, right? David Wilcock. And I also have his other books, but the Synchronicity Key. And for me, the synchronicity was that he writes about synchronicities, and there's synchronicity with your work, because he actually, you said, I do not know a lot of people who found out that there's like this blueprint, and I actually agree. I think you're the only one. But what he does is he's looking at cosmic cycles and cosmic DNA wave changes, and also David Icke is describing this hopeful stuff. It seems like far-fetched, but hey, if you see the real conspiracy fact, what's far-fetched in this upside world turned upside down? He's talking about certain periods where this war seems to like resonate with that war in that period, as if history repeats itself, not because of our conscious decisions to do nothing, or powerful people to do actually everything possible, but it seems like there's a cosmic blueprint also for these bad events. So also the cosmic DNA has a peak upside here and a peak here. So, and now we have this Kali Yuga stuff. We have the big cycle of 25,920 years. What is it? People are talking about that. So let's get into that, because might this be that, wow, did just a plane crash in your building?
No, but we are on lockdown. It's day 25 here. It's absolute lockdown. And we have roadblocks outside, and there was a patrol boat here the other day, and sometimes there are helicopters. I mean, I live in what is like a bizarre movie. Yeah. So I'm in the south of Spain here. So please continue. In Spain,
of course. Yeah, okay. And we'll go into that. Also the coronavirus, of course. But my feeling is that some people say it's 2 before 12. Well, I actually think it's already past 12. So we need to hurry up. But then again, maybe we also need to quiet down to be in the center of the hurricane, because I have a feeling if there's cosmic guidance, and I know it's a little bit in depth, if there's like a cosmic wave, DNA wave, and the changes David Wilcock is talking about, even David Icke, even Drunvalo Melchizedek, who are actually talking about the bad stuff and the Illuminati stuff and the New World Order planning stuff and the protocols of science stuff. I mean, we can go in very dark places here, people, but they all, even those specialists like you, have a very positive, hopeful outcome in the end. So what's your view that might contribute to the choice either that the world goes down the drain, or either that we will have Kali Yuga or paradise, or because people are saying we are the ones we've been waiting for, and other people are saying we can just sit down and meditate because we get help, we get a rapture, we get cosmic beings. And I have a feeling like, yeah, well, maybe it's like believe in Allah, but also hold on to your camel. So by which I mean, yes, we can be conscious creators and have conscious intentions, but we shouldn't like sit down, just wait until cosmic help is coming, because we are also the ones we've been waiting for. So we also have to participate, and maybe even, I'm not saying violence or whatever. What's your position in the soup we are in now? Here's the caterpillar. He wants to become a butterfly, but he is the soup without DNA. Nobody actually knows how they become on heaven's earth a caterpillar. And then all of a sudden there seems to be, like all those people are talking about as well, David Icke, Drunvalo, a new reality. So do we need just to wait and pray for the new reality, or we need to actively participate towards that new reality? What's your view on that? Again, you have 2 hours and a bottle of wine here.
You know, before my mother died, she said she had been studying very hard her whole life about so many different things. Books were that was her big passion. And she said, still confused, but on a higher level. And I feel I'm still confused on a higher level. And I am at a point, I don't even know if we live in a matrix or virtual reality, or if this life is what we're being told. If it's a matrix, does it matter even with history? Does history exist? You know, I don't know. I have no idea. I just know that I need to make things simple. So for me, it's a matter of, in this life, up until now, duality has been needed. So you need up to understand down, you need left to understand right, you need good to understand evil, or evil to understand good. And then there's this choice. We're given this free will so that at any time we can choose. But it's like there's different things as well going on. You have, if karma exists, then you have this as well. Then you have, it seems like we come down here with a mission that we've chosen before we enter into this life. At least that's my understanding. And I think that the way we know about, we're given like a treasure map. We have decided on this treasure map, just like I've written a book called Remind Me, Re-Mind Me. It's just a tiny little 1 hour read, but like a manual of this matrix, how to play it. Because we come down here and are just dumped and saying, okay, now you go out there and find out what are the rules. Why are you here? And the whole idea is, if we were given the rules to start with, it would be game over in 2 days. Mm-hmm. So, and then every night before we go to sleep, we're pumped up with amnesia. So everything we learned, or most of what we learned that day, is gone the next day. So we have to start all over again. So it's like, what is going on? I just know that...
Like Groundhog Day. Sorry for interruption, but the movie Groundhog Day, and I have to share this with you. There's a philosopher, I'm not sure it's Plato, with Plato's Caves is an amazing story as well, of course, in this respect. But also that we came down here, that's why I wanted to interrupt you and to facilitate you to go upwards to another thing. We came down here, but we had to drink from the river of forgetfulness. I believe that's the word. Well, I think in my case, probably the river was filled with cocktails because I can't remember a thing. But it does sound as if we chose, with a cosmic contract and a cosmic goal, to come here in a multidimensional, non-local school, and to come back as non-physical beings or reincarnate or whatever. And I know this is deep stuff, but even Drunvalo and David Icke, I went there to discuss with them the non-local and the holographic universe, so to speak. And always the spirit comes in, not just the soul and the mind, but the spirit, which sounds to me as if we have been creating ourselves, or had the option to create, or have been delivered this world of duality, while the real world is actually a non-dualistic world. It sounds like if we go back, or to a new creation, or to where we came from, all the descriptions I've so far heard from you, from David Icke, David Wilcox, from Drunvalo, and other people I interviewed, sounds as if we go back to a non-dualistic state where we originally come from. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I think so. I very much hope so. I mean, the way is that we're speculating, we're guessing, because we don't know. I know when it comes to reincarnation, for instance, I don't know. I have no idea. The second I die, if I'm going to die, then I know. Game over, or whoa, I'm on the next level. So, but it makes me feel more comfortable being here because I'm not stressed for time in the same way. Mm-hmm. And so I feel fine. I would believe that because it serves me here and now. And then I will go on. For me, what I've come to believe in or speculate in is that this body is like on a game board. I'm walking around doing stuff, doing actions, sometimes not understanding why I'm doing it. I'm following intuition, whatever that is. I'm getting ideas wherever they come from. Go left instead of go right. And it's almost like in Minecraft, the build block game, where whatever direction I choose to go, then it starts building up landscapes in front of me. So in one way, I'm just on the same spot at all times. I'm not moving at all in a small little soap bubble, but things are appearing in front of me. And whatever I focus on, just like when you take LSD, it starts growing. When you said like where energy goes, where focus goes, energy flows.
I think it's where attention goes, energy
flows.
Yeah. Now we said it.
So this is also one area that I'm concerned about, because I don't want to be part of creating this dark thing, and yet I'm so focused on it. So I'm confused there what to do. Should I continue? Should I not? So I'm trying to do my work, but without adding the emotions that would charge them a lot more.
Can I briefly interrupt you, because I think this is very important. I've done many research on intention and coherence and heart coherence, as I think you did as well. What I found out, that is not just attention. Actually, it's not attention, because I also had the same thought, like, if I focus on the Bilderbergers and CFR and the Trilateral Commission and the New World Order and the Protocols of Science and the Illuminati and the end of the world, what about my 3 lovely children? One that just went down on her knees for us to do. Anyway, and my wife and my family. Will I get infected, not with the coronavirus, but with my own mind control of actually drawing in, like the law of attraction, all this negative shit? And in a way, yes, it is, unless you do not identify with that process and you do it without the emotions of fear that normally take over your whole system and your immune system and your whole mind-body interaction. So I thought, if we can cut out this mind control of your own contagious process that comes from the law of attraction towards the focus you're having, the attention towards the process, how does it work? Then I found out that if you truly do it with intention to have like a certain goal, a certain outcome, then it might infect you. But if you do it without that intention, or you change that intention into, no, I just don't want all this shit in my body and in my system and in my mind, in my family. I just want to inform people. I just want to make conscious, and I don't want to have this dividing game between giving information or creating fear. I leave it up to the interpretation of other people. But hey, at least I stood up and did my thing without infecting myself. So I felt that the protection was, and please respond to that if you like, that if you use the right intention for even the most dark stuff, it will not affect you at all or that much than if you really get into the fear aspect and it really devours you from the inside. So that's a feeling I've been learning the last few years.
I've been feeling that since somehow I come to a position where people have started listening to me, it's very important what I send out there. And so I totally disconnect with the emotions of it. There's certain areas I cannot go into because I just can't handle it when it comes into satanic abuse of children and stuff like it's too much for me. So I need to dip in and out. I can't deal with it. But what I try to do is put no judgment on whatever. I mean, without these dark forces, we would not have met. There's so many wonderful people around the world that I would never have met. We would never have joined together had it not been for these assholes who are apparently doing stuff to us. But yet again, we are allowing them to get into these positions by being absolutely focused on our own stuff and our own desires and so on. So we're letting these alleged psychopaths into power of position, and then we're buying into their lies that are so obvious after a while that it's incredible. I mean, how stupid can we be? That is... So what I try to do is disconnect with the emotional charge. I see it as mysteries that needs to be solved.
Exactly.
And I feel that somehow I've been uniquely designed, this body and this mind. I mean, I feel like Rain Man in this area. Do you know, because if you ask me, music has been a very big part of my life. I cannot remember a chord progression. I cannot remember some lyrics. I cannot. I'm struggling. Just the fretboard of the guitar, I'm still struggling. What is that, an A or a C when you get up on the neck? This thing, I mean, my God, my head is like this. Tell me any of these assassinations or conspiracies or false flag operations or mass shooting, my head is like, put me in the kitchen, absolute disaster. Put me here, boom, I'm like a rocket. So how did that work? I don't know.
I won't ask you to cook for me. If we meet again, I won't ask you to cook for me. I'll cook for you, okay? Continue.
That's very kind of you, John. I think both of us will appreciate that.
Yeah, I think so.
No, so it's like, how does it work? I don't know. But it's like when you're in a computer game as well, you choose character, you choose thing. And I think that the computer game world has helped us to get a better understanding of how universe, how it works. The internet, you know, you put out prayers, please, oh Google, tell me what is the, you know, but it's the divine Google that with prayers you can receive answers. It's the same as you write in a search engine, boom. And with computers, with hard drives, different hard drives and processors, what is that? Your brain is this, your body cells has memories as well. Do you know, what are you, when you're dreaming, is that defragmentation? Do you know, I think that the whole computer world makes it a lot easier for us to get a grip, instead of when Jesus was walking around and had to say, well, listen, when this camel walks 50 miles, he gets thirsty. You get it? You get it? No, wait a second. Okay, when the donkey, well, it's like we are at a point where it's so much easier to get a better understanding. And especially with the computer games, I think that's where it becomes interesting, at least for me. Also, when you look at movies like the first Matrix movie, where it's like in different levels, and I believe that when you listen or learn from old philosophies or religions, they often talk about your higher self,
Yes.
and I believe that is me, the player, and then this one that you're talking to now is on the board game. I'm the one going around doing stuff. But the only one way that I can communicate with my higher self, with myself as the player, is through emotions, not through words, because then it would be game over right away. So it's emotion. So I need to become aware of my emotions, because that's my higher self saying, go there or don't go there, do that or do not go. You know, so it's like, and I think so-called negative emotions are saying, that's my higher self saying, you're off track, you're off track. Mm-hmm. Just like a GPS, you know, in the old days, echo, whatever that was called, you know, you got that beep, 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 beep. So the emotions will tell you if you're feeling positive, if you're feeling strong, enthusiastic, you are on track. And the treasure map you're being given, most people think that it should be like this. The perfect road, your perfect road is like this, I believe. Mm-hmm. That's the perfect one when you manage to nail it, you know. And the way to find that is to follow your goosebumps, when you're compassionate about where you feel this, you know, if that is cooking or baking cookies or solving murder cases, like in my, what is it, what is yours, it's different from all of us. We all have different parts to play, and so I try to follow that. And also, it's not only through emotions, it's also some thoughts that just comes, or ideas that just pops up in your head. It's up to you. I mean, the mind is made to think, but it's up to you to say, whoop, I like that one, and take it and do something with it. And so what I try to do is, when things pop out of nowhere, I act. If I ask my, I act, you know, I ask my heart, I act, or I don't. Leave it, I act. So but you were talking about action before. I think action is very, very important, because just to sit there and say, maybe it worked in the old days, but here and now, At least on my limited understanding, I don't think so. I think we need to combine the two. So you need to be fully responsible for your thoughts, your intention, and where you want to go with what you're doing, with your actions, but you need to act as well. And that's where courage comes in. And courage is only needed when you are uncomfortable or when you are afraid. It's a psychopath doesn't need courage because he just, but you say, oh my God, how that's incredible what he managed to do. No, he was just a psychopath. He doesn't have that. So he can just go like a Sherman tank and just crush people. And so the courage is needed. But it's also with courage, I think there's a beauty when you manage to meet meet what you're fearful of, because that is also the doors. It's almost like your fear will show you the doors. Like, for instance, I myself was terrified of speaking in public just less than 10 years ago or something like that. I mean, shaking, crying, that type of fear. I avoided funerals because I knew maybe somebody was going to ask me to say something. And I mean, oh my God, I would rather blow my head off. And then through Raj Yoga, where we were very much asked to talk in front of, we were only a group of 8 people. That was where I had my whole shakings and all of it. But I met it. And then that opened the door into what I'm doing now, where I'm talking all over the world. I mean, how did that work? And from what I was so terrified of has become where my mission is and where I'm very comfortable. Once I'm up on stage, I'm very comfortable. It's also where before I do more or less every interview I've done, so I don't know, 500 to 1,000 interviews, or if I go on stage, I ask before I have a little prayer. I ask a bearded guy, a guru, not my guru. I don't have gurus, but he's been very helpful for my teacher, Nelani Chelaram. I ask him, I ask my ancestors, I ask all the saints and sages and the angels to assist me, get my ego out of the way and deliver what is meant to make the biggest and most positive effect on whoever is listening out there. And then I just leave it to that. And I think, inspiration comes from the word inspiritus. When body and mind aligns, spirit enters. And that's almost like when you have fixed yourself enough, just like you put the connections into the right ADSL boxes and stuff like that, suddenly the internet will work. The downloads will come a lot faster. Yeah, and so you need to keep yourself in tune as good as you can, and become aware of where you are, to tune yourself in. And you do that in daily life with your family around you, with your interactions. I try to do that. Every meeting I have would be somehow beneficial for myself, the other, or hopefully both. Every meeting, every opportunity I have to assist someone or help, I do that for my own good as well, because I super enjoy. I think helping, selfless service is beautiful. And so every room I enter, I hope it's a little better than when I leave than when I came into it. And with that, and then ask the heart at all times. Do not get confused by the brain, but ask the heart. The heart knows what is good, what is not good, good, evil. It's back to that. I need to make it simple for me, and I know in my heart, kicking that dog, not good. Helping that child, good. These type of things. It's in all of our systems. We've been messed up maybe, but we know it. Maybe we're trying to drown these voices with alcohol and drugs and shut it down. But once you let it out there, you will find out. Maybe you will have to go through very painful, body, mind, soul work to get down to the voice, because your true voice is very quiet. It's very quiet. It's like a whisper, but you need to silence this one to be able to hear it. And so it's not an easy one, but if you want easy, you come to the wrong place, You
should have stayed there. Okay, yeah. But let me try to get into a next question I think you will find fascinating, and it's important, I think, for the general listeners. In spiritus, you said, it reminds me of satanic movies with in spiritus sanctus and everything. But anyway, in spiritus, let's not joke here because it's serious. In spiritus feels to me like almost the opposite in this non-dualistic universe of what we call cognitive dissonance. Because in my work, I've interviewed people like Eric Pearl, Bruce Lipton, Lee McTaggart, talking about intention, heart coherence. And here it comes, of course, Bruce Lipton with his biology of belief. I feel, as a neuropsychologist and author myself, I've researched the field of fear. So the only thing to fear is fear itself, you know. So the identification process, also like in Tibetan Buddhism. Now, if that's true, I tried to research the psychology of fear. And what I found out is that when fear kicks in, we get this cognitive dissonance, which is almost like the opposite of what you just said. In tune with cosmic internet, in tune with your intuition, with your gut feeling, with your goosebumps. So you know when you have to go to the left, to the right, to come back to your center again, because all these diversions were necessary maybe for experience and for your learning path in the school of mankind in general. But when fear kicks in, and it sounds to me like maybe we can go into the coronavirus fear, when fear is being engineered, and how to call it, predictive engineering, we also have, maybe we can say something about that as well later. But when fear gets programmed and kicks in, your whole system goes not into biology of belief, but what I call the biology of denial. And then our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions are not in line, and especially not even psychoneuroimmunologically or locally in the body. I mean, even with the cosmic internet, if we do not listen to those downloads, to those guidelines, to those interruptions, to those corrections, we call it belief, call it intuition, call it your gut feeling, call it goosebumps, then fear can be so powerful that it just knocks you down and you're like, okay. And then cognitive dissonance says, let me go on with my work. Probably they are right. And you even defend your own prison that has been engineered upon you with your own mind control of believing that. So, and I know you like to make things simple. I like to make things complex before we go into simple things. But let's make it simple again. If that is true, and let's go into there, what's the solution for the big mind control that has been put upon us? And the mind control we create ourselves because of this biology of denial and the cognitive dissonance. Like, it cannot be true. I dare not to say it is true, so it will never be true. So it just simply isn't true, because that's the mindset of a lot of people right now with this fear of the coronavirus.
You have very simple questions, I must say.
Simple questions, yes.
Yeah, very simple. Thank you.
Sorry.
There is a reason why we are kept fearful through media at all times. There is a reason why this is being pumped out from all different directions. If you look at any kind of news feeds, it's all the time horror, death, destruction. And why are they doing that? When you look at the ownership behind all of these things, you will see you come back into these networks that are trying to control us. And I would say fear is super important to become aware of, because that is the only weapon they have against us. Yes. If we're not fearful, we just give them the finger and we go on our way, live our life, and don't, give them any time of the day. So fear is a very low frequency. Love is the highest frequency, they say. I'm not talking about I fancy you, baby, if you're nice to me, that type of love, or I'm talking about the universal love. And I think an individual like Jesus, if he existed, I see him as a supercracker, a hacker, someone who cracked the matrix and understood that, oh, hang on a second, if this is the way it works, let's see if we can solve it. Mm-hmm. And there are beautiful experiments in laboratories that I've seen where you have a high frequency meet a low frequency. And it's not like they end up in the middle starting to fight each other and then they end up 50-50. No, the lower one just, boom, gets annulled. It disappears. And this is what I think Jesus said. Listen, guys, if that is the case, Whatever the problem is, problems are on a lower frequency because love itself don't need problems at all. So why don't we meet it with a higher one? Because boom, that solves it. And while we're at it, why don't use the same standard solution at any time? Use love in all situations. That will dissolve whatever the problem is. So this is why, for me, love is the answer. I mean, that can sound very new agey. For me, it's reality. That is also what has kept me alive, I think, because I met very, very brutal dark forces that would very much like me to not be alive. So by doing that, that gives me a perspective, you know. So when something comes, oh my God, I know I'm being shut down, you know, down in a lower frequency. And I know the way out is raise the frequency. Raise it for my own protection and well-being. And I find one of the ways to raise that frequency is gratitude. Just feel the gratitude. Not just say, I'm happy for this, I'm happy for that. Doesn't matter. You need to feel it and just breathe it in, and whoop, it's like a helium balloon that just lifts you. And then they can't get to you. It's almost like a virus that needs to hook on to you. And if you're not whole, the virus will find, the fear virus will find something to hook onto, and that will be where it can control you and start sucking you for energy. But if you're whole, if you're inflated, like whoop, just like a balloon, there's nothing to hook onto, and they cannot control you. And so my task that I've given myself is to make the fog lift, you know, that we've been put in this fog world of fear and deception, smoke and mirrors, where most people don't understand. They just feel, I don't feel well. I don't feel well. I'm stressed. I'm under pressure. I don't feel well. But they don't know why, because they're in the receiving end of a lot of deception going on, like a magician just pumping with all kinds of things. So what I've been trying to do is lift the veil, you know, just like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, pull the curtain to the side, say, listen guys, what you see as a big monster that is invisible, it's an old guy with a microphone and a massive amplifier called the media. They're trying to shut you down from all your dreams, all your passions, all of that, shut you down into a slavery state of mind. And I don't think that's okay. That is not where we belong. Mm-hmm. So we have to thank them, just like in a gym. If you go there are no weights. You can't really build any muscles. You need the weights to have the friction, you know. And it's the same with your soul. We need these weights. We have up until this point have needed it to build up spiritual muscles. So we have to thank them. That's why I call them black angels, because these are individuals that take on a lot of bad karma on their shoulders to educate us by being absolute horrible, satanic assholes multiplied into the zillions. How horrible can they get? They are there. But they're there in one way, at least the way I see it. I try to benefit from it. Thank you so much for being that horrible. That will give me the understanding and the possibility for me to evolve as a being. But I really hope that I can now evolve to the next level where we don't need these things anymore, that we come to a point like, come on, give it up. It's game over. You know, we reached this whole point. And this is where Corona suddenly, it's the crown jewel of this whatever. I think this is interesting because just a few weeks ago, I know quite a few people that went through very near death experiences on different levels, really brutal experience, myself and my sweetheart included, where we felt, I am dying. I am really dying physically. And then also at a point where we were so close of achieving things that we had been working so hard for so many years. I mean, it was like one phone call away and boom, overnight. Suddenly, it was like a new game board. It was a whole new, like, what? And it was called Corona, where everything up until that point doesn't matter anymore. It's behind us. Woof. we're at a point now, we can't leave the house without, I mean, here we can be fined 1,500 euros if we go outside for no reason. I am at a point in my life where I'm going to plan the rebellious act of going down on the beach, which is about 75 meters from here, on my own without permission. I'm going to do it today because
With the camera, please.
Well, maybe, yeah. But it's like, for that to become a task that demands courage, it's like, what is that? I mean, we have roadblocks here. But it's in the mind as well, you know, because someone said you had to go inside now for your protection, and everybody, not a shot fired, went into martial law state. Boom, thank you and goodbye. We will stay inside, bend over, pull down our pants, and say, do whatever you want. And how did that happen? It's like, and I'm one of them. So it's very bizarre. Also, 1,500. Then you think financially, oh, if I go out and they will fine me 1,500, instead of saying I'm going to go out there and there will be no one there, maybe, because they don't even know, they don't even have to be here, you know, to control us. And people say now the military is in this town where we live. I've seen photo of one military vehicle, just like an ordinary one. So what does that mean? Does that mean that the military is here to control us? Or does it mean that one military truck maybe took the wrong exit and just happened to be here? Do you know, it's like we built this whole thing whoop, so big, instead of, I've seen one patrol boat out here days ago, and I think I'm being surveilled. You know, they're there. I can't even swim away. It's so, the mind just makes up all of these stories. And I mean, I went the other day, my sweetheart sold a gas heater, and very good timing, I must say. And anyway, so I had to drive about 2 kilometers. You're not allowed to drive for no reason. You're only allowed to go to the nearest supermarket. You can be fined, once again, 1,500 euros if you're out there driving for no reason, or if you're two in the same car. If you are two and you have permission, authorization, we're involved in, Kim especially, in charity, helping a lot of feeding people because they're on this almost on starvation. You know, many people, many super rich here on the coast, many very poor, you know. So anyway, you're allowed, if you are two people with authorization in the same car, one has to be in the back and one is driving. And I'm at the point, you know, like, so what is the difference between if I'm sitting here and another person in the passenger seat, that is like 1.2 meters maybe. And in the back seat, that is like more or less 1.2 meters. What is the difference, you know? So once again, here, and it's this stepping stone, this totalitarian, like step, how they close us in. And then we add to the whole thing and start policing each other. And I'm like, come on, what the hell is going up with us?
It sounds to me as if you're describing, and I'm joking here, but I'm also being very serious because I posted around this topic. It almost sounds like, in the Dutch, they call it NSB, Nazi practitioner, because we are being followed. There's going to be apps for the vaccinations. The test might contain something that actually work for the maybe forced vaccinations later that Bill Gates want and the ID 2020 organizations. And we are just sitting there like, okay, in a way we're like shooting ducks, but now we even have almost delivered then the perfect mechanism not to go into protests in 5G or other protests, to have love and communication. You know, I actually wrote an article about, you have to know this, there's a little Dutch book, so probably you don't know it, but it's in de greep van de griep. People, the Dutch listeners, Nederlandse luisteraars kunnen even naar hier links aan moppen. The flu, the influenza. But it's a book about influenza, research journalist. This is the point. He writes about experiments they did in the 50s to see how contagious this is, how this contagious infectious disease actually work, how they transfer. They used children, they got sick and they touched everything, and after a while they were allowed to play cards, so all the cards were dirty and contagious. And then willing adults who were healthy came in, and they were allowed to play with the children and do everything, play cards with them. So obviously they would be infected, right? None got sick. Then they did another experiment with glass, and the Russian scientists know it shouldn't be quartz glass, and this is a hint for the bioenergetics and the biophysicists listening now. But anyway, it was normal glass, children behind glass, children were sick, people were sitting on the other side of the glass, the healthy adults, and then they had this ventilator, not the one for here, but the normal ventilator, to actually direct the virus particles, if there are any, because that's controversial, towards the adults, so from the children to the adults, and then they all got sick. So what they found out, it can be contagious through aerosol principles, through the air, but only when people are in a closed, confined space, and only almost as if they directly cough and spit in your face. So that author even mentioned that it could even be in a football stadium. And I thought, oh, here we go with all the closed down events in the sport world and our interaction between people and the 1.5 meter economy, which is bullshit because of this. Because if you actually need contagion to happen, if you need to sneeze or cough in someone's face at a very close proximity in a closed space, then we are already safe in the normal distance we have with people. And even if we turn the upside world upside down again, then how stupid is to use all families all over the world to put them in their prisons called houses to be incubation machines for this virus? Because if it's true that it's in closed proximity and in closed spaces, then hey, A, how come all families are not sick? B, if they were all sick, how stupid is it that you have this intervention and not let them put outside where the sun and the frequencies of light can actually destroy the virus? So here's my thought. If there are scientific experiments showing that there's actually not a real danger unless we spit and sneeze and cough each other directly in the faces, maybe we should do that to the cops. Oh, I didn't say that. Anyway, if that's the truth, then this whole intervention stuff is bullshit, right?
I fear the coronavirus about 0%. I believe the official narrative about 0%. I think this is the biggest false flag operation PSYOP that they pulled up ever. I don't think that the virus is... I think the bioweapon, yes, is there, but I don't think it's out there at all. I think all of these numbers, when you look from the simulation in Event 201, October 18, I tell you, I don't even think it's called Event 201. If you look at Event 2 and then there's like a globe and a 1, it's called Event 21 because it's totally connected to Agenda 21. I think that is why they chose this number. Where you have the exact same players like the Johns Hopkins Hospital, the Bloomberg thing, you got Bill and Melinda Gates that are always there when it comes to eugenics, and the World Economic Forum, that's sort of the same as the 1% of the elite. These are there all the time. They had the simulation identical to what we see now, but on months before it actually happened. And it's the Johns Hopkins Hospital that are delivering all of these maps now. We are giving us all of these numbers, saying with all of these deaths. And I'm in direct contact with one of the people that have developed that technology of mapping statistics together with maps. I'm going to do an interview with him in a few days, and he says absolute bullshit, all of it. These numbers does not match up at all. I have the official numbers from Italy now that the total number of deaths that are directly connected to the coronavirus are, and this was the first country that was shut down in Europe because of this whole thing, is down to 2. That's 1 or 2 that were not sick from something else, that was not 93.5 years old already or very young, that were not having chemo or something. But now the World Health Organization, which is heavily funded by Bill and Melinda Gates, are giving all of these guidelines for death certificates where anything, if you sneeze and you're dying from a brain hemorrhage, from sneezing, that's corona as well. Anything will be called corona. And when you look at what a virus really is, there's some major misconception here or misunderstanding, because a virus is dead. It is dead. So this whole disinfectant thing with washing your hands and stuff doesn't work. You know, it's not bacteria, it's not fungus. And so it's a dead thing. And as far as I've been informed, and I've been in touch with different medical experts, and I hear more and more people stepping forward that knows what they're talking about, a lot more than I in this area. They say the only way that you can be infected by a virus is by injection. That's how you can get it. Bacteria, fungus, totally different ballgame. But a virus, that is like that. So then you have to start asking yourself, but viruses, we've seen viruses before, like HIV and Ebola and all of these, and these things I've also been part of exposing for years. And there's an incredible documentary called In Lies We Trust. Love the title. In Lies We Trust, with Dr. Leonard Horowitz, where he talks about the AIDS epidemic and how this virus was created by the same doctor that was later celebrated as the one that discovered the HIV virus, Dr. Robert Gallo, but he was actually the one who invented it. And then it was injected into the gay population in different areas, and also people.
Haiti also.
Yeah.
Haiti, yeah.
So you have every time one of these epidemics have started, where did they come from? Where did these viruses appear from? They came from the same source, many times from the CDC in Atlanta, Georgia. And the CDC, which is the Center for Disease Control, I would say the Center for Disease Creation, I would call it more directly. That was an institution. Well, it's called an government institution, but it's not. It's like a company of its own, part of the New World Order, and a swinging door into the vaccine industry that is also controlled by Bill and Melinda Gates. It was created in 1947, I believe, at this very same time when Operation Paperclip was very active, getting Nazi experts in different areas, including bioweapons, out of Germany through the rat lines organized by the Vatican into America and South America, especially the States, where they were part of starting NASA with Werner von Braun and his buddies. Yeah, you had OSS was turned into CIA with the help of Reinhard Gehlen and other people, very, very skilled individuals. And then you had CDC, the Center for Disease Control, created exactly at the same time. And we had NATO created also more or less at the same time. Also, all of these things were being put into place and started working hand in hand.
And also Len Horowitz in his book Emerging Viruses, which is almost like the book version of In Lies We Trust almost, but Emerging Virus, AIDS and Ebola, created, intended, or accidental, something like that. He talked about the major part of the war chest after World War II. A part went into the pesticide, herbicide, fungicides, which we call healthy for our agriculture, which of course is a war poison. But the main part of the war chest, he says, Hitler actually talked about the continuation of the war as World War III, went to Merck, and of course it came from IG Farben, and of course IG Farben also made the gas to kill the Jews. How many we don't know. But if we talk about that and we look into that, then actually the World War II was also a big financial injection into all the pharmaceutical companies. So it wasn't just that, it was also the pharmaceutical companies, and especially Merck, but many of them became big because of the war effort.
But it's the same. I need to put a big question mark around dear Mr. Adolf Hitler, because more and more information is coming forward showing a whole different image of this than history books has been telling us. You know, it's always the victor that writes the history books. And the more I start learning about dear Mr. Schicklgruber, then we've been told a massive lie around that. There's also around this whole alleged Holocaust, that I can tell you is so not true. Mm-hmm. And I'm just looking from a logistic point of view. I've done one interview because I know this is the way to put a shotgun to your head and get yourself eliminated from the internet. So I've done one on Red Eye's interview. It's called Making Critical Thinking Illegal. We avoided the word Holocaust in the title, but please go and look at that. It's taken down now. But there I go through all of the different numbers with the different alleged concentration camps and the logistics and the witnesses, the survivors from the Holocaust. I mean, how they were connected and all of that, just showing the official story. Absolutely not true. Absolutely not true. So we have to be very aware of where we take and, I mean, double, triple check the facts.
Yes.
But what you're saying, though, is very, very true, because these chemical giants that came from that power structure was injected into the Western world and they just changed the front door and the name of the company. They're still the same companies, and these companies have been bought up by the elite and turned into ruthless weapons against humanity. Brutal. And like the CDC is like a swinging door into Merck and other parts of the vaccination industry. They get top jobs there. They have to wait for 1 year and boom, there you go. CEO for that, CEO for this and that.
And also the FDA, by the way, because I wrote the book. It's in Dutch, unfortunately for you, but about aspartame, but also the true face of the pharmaceutical and food industries. And you mentioned the swinging door. I call it revolving door policy, where people from the industry actually go into government and the other way around after bad policy, which is good for the pharmaceutical and food industry. And it's as corrupt as people can be, and people don't believe that the FDA and the CDC, and in Holland we have the RIVM and the CBG and the Gezondheidsraad. I wrote about the actual facts. It's not conspiracy theory, it's conspiracy fact. And people, even if you present, this is the problem, I think, the human mind corruption, even if you present them the facts, even if you ask them to research it for themselves, they still don't believe the pile of evidence of truth that is in front of them. But anyway, continue your story, but I just want to add that. FDA also.
I think for most of us, it's very painful to come to an understanding of what's actually going on, because that just shows that we've been taken for a ride in so many different areas of life. But what I think is the positive thing is that these dark forces have worked so hard on concentrating the power to fewer and fewer and fewer over the decades, meaning that now it doesn't really matter if you're looking into the military-industrial complex or the prison system, which has also been privatized in the US, or big pharma or big oil or big drugs or whatever it is you're looking into. Telecom, EMF, microchipping, vaccine. You come and you find the same companies, the same people. It's the again and again and again and again. You look into politics like Hillary Clinton, suddenly she's on Monsanto's, one of the board members there. And I mean, these are very demonic individuals that are just, it's like a cancer growth with what do you call it, metastasis. I don't know what it's called.
Metastasis, yeah.
Yeah, so you just have to, I think I thank them, because it makes it a lot easier for me, because now it doesn't matter if you're really compassionate about finding out about chemtrails, go for it, or Big Pharma, go for it, or Gladio, go for it, and let's help each other, because we're ending up with the same head of this octopus every single time. And anyone who don't believe in these type of networks, look into a company called Serco, SERCO. Oh my God. Oh my God. That is the octopus. It's, how they can control so much in the world. And there's a YouTube video called Serco, the biggest company, the world's biggest company you never even heard of, or something like that. Something like incredible. I mean, what they can control, and without us even knowing about it, that is incredible. But this is how we're being played. And so what I was called here a while ago, somebody called me the master of duh. And I thought that was a real compliment because he said, once you see it for yourself, then I try to put the pieces there together and then up to people to judge for themselves. And then once you see it, you can't unsee it. And then it's so obvious. So that's like, duh. So he called me the master of duh, which I thought was pretty good. And also there was this American black lady who contacted me. She said, as a black American citizen, or person living in the US, she has been feeling these forces her whole life. I mean, very close on her body. Her whole life has been dictated by them. But she said, I put a face on them. You know, I made it personal so that you could suddenly see, aha, there. And I think this is very important to map these networks. And because it's just like as a cancer doctor, to find them, where, how much has it spread to? Is it in the lungs? Is it in the kneecaps? Is it in your brain? You have to find and define the problem first to be able to come up with a solution. So, and here the solution every single time is exposure, transparency, opening up these dark things, even though it's very painful and smelly and awful to see it. You have to open it up, just like with a beautiful body that has these cancer things. Sometimes you need to expose them so that the body can finally heal itself. But you need to dig deep and get the roots out.
Like your website, Light on Conspiracies. You're putting a searchlight on them, but it's also a thankful, forgiving light in a way, because, you know, in a non-dualistic universe, we might even thank them for the process of this cosmic learning school. It's a double-edged sword.
That's it. And the name, it was my beautiful Kim here who came up with that name. I think it's so good, Light on Conspiracies. It says it all. And I have this prayer that I finish all interviews with, or presentations as well. And it goes like, it's exactly what you're saying. It goes like this. May the entire universe be filled with peace and joy, love and light. That's the entire universe be filled with peace and joy, love and light. May everyone, and especially the ones who hurt us, be filled with peace and joy, love and light. Especially the ones who hurt us, be filled with peace and joy, love and light. May the light of truth overcome all darkness, so victory to that light. That is my take on it. You know, we need, let go of the judgment, judge the sin, not the sinner, and just boom it. You know, it's like all kind of criminality. It can only function in the dark. It can only function in the shadows. So as soon as you pull the curtain, as soon as you aim the spotlight at them, it neutralizes them. They cannot move. And that's exactly what I try to do. You know, just go there and fearlessly, do not let fear stop it, and then let the truth expose it. Just show it, this is what's going on. And suddenly they can't move. And that's when they start getting desperate. And I think what we're looking at now are desperate maneuvers from a dark empire that is falling apart now, because millions of people are waking up almost on a daily basis to what's actually going on. It's wonderful in many ways. And also millions and millions and millions of people, I think, while being in house arrest, are starting to look at their life saying, holy crap. You know, was that really worth it, that mad rat race out there? And here, for instance, now we're in Spain, where everything is shut down except for the supermarket, money starts losing the value as well, because what can I do with it? It's just paper things. Food is more valuable. Somebody's hungry over there. The money will not help them. Give them a can of tomatoes or whatever. You know, so it's like, and also, I hear a lot of beautiful stories about where families are gathering again. They're starting to see each other like, oh my God, I have a teenage daughter. I just remember she was a baby. What happened? You know, whoa. And now they suddenly have time. So I think use this time well. Read the books that you wanted to read for a long time. Join up with family and friends. If you still have the possibility to go outside in the nature, which not all of us have, do it. You know, I have this parking lot over here near a supermarket where I go and I'm rebellious and I'm just out there on a parking lot. and I'm gonna be here as long as I want until they say you have to go home. No, but so it's bizarre times, and so the corona, I gave you 100%. There's a lot of fingers going up today here, but the coronavirus, I fear it.
If you put them together, it's this, right? So
yeah. So I do like this. No, so it's the coronavirus. It's an absolute psyop, and the key players in it. You can just go to Event 201. You will see some of the key players in this whole thing, where I would very much question what are these individuals doing right now. You will see them in key positions as part of this theater play that is being played out in the world today, calling the corona crisis. We're at a crossroad in the history of the world, I would say, where up until now you've had the information flow has been like foggy, so you can't really tell the difference. What is propaganda? What is true? What is lies? Very difficult. Now it's like this. There's no connecting dots at all. It's like either absolute 100% propaganda, lies, deception by psychopaths controlling the media. I mean, 100% the reports from the hospitals and so on with all of these death numbers and so, these are absolutely not true. Then you have the real truth, compassion, transparency, beautiful human beings on the other side. And how can you make the two meet? You cannot. It's so divided now. It's like black and white.
So you mean it's so in your face? It helps our level of discernment between good and bad.
Exactly, it's fantastic, and it's like my friend Jason Goodman in New York that I'm doing a show with every Monday called Night on Conspiracies. He was one of the first who started walking up and filming these hospitals that are in media told like they're war zones, and people are dying, and there's stacked bodies everywhere, and on refrigerated trucks, and what are we going to do? Mass horror events like that. And he started going there, filming the center of the epicenter in New York. Empty. There's nothing there. Empty. Parked ambulances, cordon off areas, nothing. So now there's something called #FilmYourHospital, and I'm getting from all over the world. I'm in such a fantastic position now where people are sending stuff to me from everywhere. And it's the same thing. Empty, 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 empty. But the media says war zone, war zone, war zone. So what is going on? I can tell you that the official story, absolute lie. I mean, 100%. There's not even a degree of truth in it. Sometimes the people that are being interviewed are real people that are seriously concerned and so on. But I think that what they're referring to
actors.
No, but some of them are authentic, I think. But what they're referring to are symptoms of 5G, not corona.
Oh, yeah.
And because it's very similar. I mean, they've done it beautifully. You have to give it to them. Flu-like symptoms in flu times. That's fantastic.
It's brilliant. But hold on a minute, because this is important. I'm getting an intuition here. Before, at the beginning of our talk, you talked about people, because people can't understand, no, this conspiracy can't be that great. Worldwide, everybody should be involved. And you mentioned only the inner circle, only the people at the key positions. But if we go, and I think you're right, but if we go into the hospitals, how many should be involved in building that conspiracy as if it's full with corona patients, but it's actually not? That would mean the whole personnel should be involved. Or do they create a situation where they can actually create diversion or with their own personnel so they are not in a need-to-know basis? How do they do that? Do you know?
John, it's a very good question. I mean, we are in unprecedented times. I mean, this has never happened before on this scale. Yeah. So you have to like, whoa, how did they do it? How did they do it? I think it's a combination of different ways. For one thing, it's Agenda 21, which is exactly what we're seeing being played out. Agenda 2030, they had to change it because we weren't ready for 21. So, and that is 1984 wet dream. I mean, that is exactly the Brave New World the things that we see through Hollywood movies of a future I don't even want to imagine. Agenda. There's about, I think, 153 countries have signed that Agenda 21 and 190 something Agenda 2030. It was designed by former Prime Minister Anne Bilderberg, Gro Harlem Brundtland, and Maurice Strong, one of the people behind Bill Clinton. And I mean, it's very fancy wording, but oh my God, when you look into what that is. So why on earth did they sign this? How come that people, representatives from more than 150 countries have signed an absolute mad thing like that? They have to be super corrupt to do a thing like that, not or paid off, super corrupt. And so you have that network of Agenda 21 and 2030, and you can see behind many of the leaders now when they step forward is the logo Agenda 2030 behind them. So that's one network of people in key position. And if you control the presidents or foreign ministers and so on through networks like the Bilderberg Group, the Trilateral, you were talking about that before, the Foreign Relations, Council on Foreign Relations, these type of networks, there's similar ones also. You have the World Economic Forum. That's also, they meet once a year, just like the Bilderberg Group in Davos, Switzerland. And it's a tiny place, 11,000 people, I believe. And last year, there was 1,500 private jets that landed there. Private jets. So we're talking about the criminal, not censored, absolutely not. Anyone can come there, but it's just that the entrance ticket is $100,000. That's the cheap seats. So, sorry, John, I don't think we're going to go this year. What do you
I could have bought your ticket.
Well, so it's like, how do they do it? So we have these networks. Then we have the Freemasonic networks as well. Then you have Gladio, NATO and Gladio. NATO that have been turned into a terror tool of unheard measurements, and where they've been working very hard to connect the U.S. Army, the U.S. military, and the NATO and the European Union. They've been trying to connect these three as a one world army. So you have these networks. So what you need to control are the owners. If you noticed, I don't think there's a lot of these hospitals that are privately owned. So they're government, controlled hospital. One thing also with empty hospitals means, where is the staff? They have been sent home. And we just see key people that are there in the entrance, or where are they? Or people that looks like they're working for that hospital. How do you know? Because they've got the uniform. That's the only thing you see. You see somebody with a face mask and in green clothes or whatever the color is of that hospital. Oh, it's a nurse. No, it's a person with clothes that color. It's the same with false flag operations. You see normally the normal staff, the normal police, the normal fire brigade people are pulled away from the center of this operation. And then you have people running around there in police uniforms, SWAT team uniforms, stuff like that, with sometimes face masks on, so you can't recognize them. And it's for a reason, because you're not supposed to find out who they are, because they are not the real one. So one of the reasons I believe with these hospitals that they're empty is the staff has been said, no, because of this crisis, we don't want you to be infected. Thank you so much. We will pay your leave and go away. So that means that then you can control a few people. And through the ownership and control of these hospitals, that's the hospital part of the whole thing. Yeah. Then you have, through media, for instance, in New York, one of the first doctors that went out and started this whole mayhem in New York at the Elmhurst Hospital and Sinai as well, her name is Dr. Colleen Smith. She was out there with a face mask saying, oh my God, we don't have ventilators, it's horrible, people are dying, all that. Okay, you looked her up on LinkedIn. Now her profile has disappeared after we started pointing at her. She's not a real doctor. She's a medical expert in medical simulations. She even educates people in medical simulations. We're back to these simulations where crisis actors, that's what we're talking about.
Exactly.
We have people from this big cruise ship that were infected, Who did they interview? His name was David Abel. You check out on IMDb, which is for actors, and you can rent him for parties. He can do them with or without beard, with or without hair. So a crisis actor, one again, David Abel, and he's not the only one. So how do you control it? So if you control media, which in the US is 96% or more is owned by 6 companies, and these 6 companies are working together as well, connected into the same network. So how do you control that? That includes publishing companies, radio stations, magazines, and TVs. So it's like, that's a lot of propaganda that you can control. So you got like 4% left to alternative media and so on, which no one will hear them, because there's no money behind it for marketing and so on. So you got that, and then you got the control of like FEMA and the Patriot Act that was created after a massive false flag called the 911 or 911. That's interesting. Also, 911 is the emergency number that they're using. They had very much numerology in this whole crappy world of theirs. So these things were on standby. That took years to prepare, and then boom, the towers came down, and woof, in they were overnight, more or less. So the people in FEMA and the Patriot Act and these things are also controlled by the same networks. They're the ones keeping these, having these drills, and very often the drills are part of a false flag operation. So the drills are there to prepare, rehearse, and boom, then they go live, and we have a mass shooting or we have a terror attack. So then you see the Rockefeller Foundation keeps popping up. Also, if you look at the New World Order, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, always there. Like you have a lot of the propaganda when it comes to Europe, Associated Press and Reuters, both of them owned by Rothschild. So that you can't trust them either. BBC totally in on it, state-sponsored and controlled by the Royal English Crown. Where so you can't trust them either, and also the rest of media in the world are like this when it comes to BBC and CNN. If they say it, that is the truth. Associated Press and Reuters, if they say it, that's the truth. They just repeat what they're being told. So we can't trust that either. Then you have the Rockefeller Foundation that are behind something called the 100 Resilient Cities. And I have come to a point where I almost believe that the word resilience that they're using, that's a code word for real terror, because they're preparing against terror, but they're actually the ones carrying it out. Yeah. And this is one of the reasons also why I've been able to predict so many of these things up to 2 months ahead of when they actually happened. It's come to a point. My last name has become a verb. I'm not the one who is named like that, but hashtag Dammegard or to Dammegard or Dammegarding is to predict upcoming terror attacks precisely, which I think I'm up to 19 now that I predicted up to 2 months before it happened. How? Because it's the same group that is traveling around globally carrying it out on a street level to a large extent.
So what they call emergency preparedness is actually their predictive programming, because they know beforehand what they are about to do, because they're actually creating the whole scene beforehand, right?
That's it. Yeah. Problem, reaction, solution. We're back to the old Romans. They secretly create a problem. And part of the problem is making you afraid of it. A few years ago when Sweden was so peaceful, they sent out a brochure. Are you prepared when the war comes, or if the war comes? And then everything you should. I was like, what? Are we in a situation where are we in such a, and prepare with food, prepare with that, prepare with all the things. And then the very same organization called MSB was part of creating the alleged terror attack in Stockholm 2017. And the exact same players, so it's part of this whole thing, how they prepare you. And also, it's a billion-dollar business, anti-terror preparedness. But they're the ones who created terror. There was no terror before they came around. Terror is, as far as I know, it's an invention by Mossad. War by deception. They came up with these things. And then during the 50s, 60s, and onwards, they've been carrying out terror attacks against us, the normal people. It's called, gray zone problematic, they call it, to destabilize modern society.
Yeah.
Or also the strategy of tension, as the CIA called it, how to get us out of balance through random acts of violence so that we will freak out and then accept their solution, which is the same all the time. More and more surveillance, more and more robocops, more and more, everything, giving up our liberties. And this corona thing. Yeah, this corona thing is the ultimate example of this whole thing.
Okay, now Ole, I just saw that my wife and children are back, and of course, their education at home while we are being out of a job and not paid as teachers for our own children who confiscate our laptops so we can't even try to get out of our unemployment. So that was me being critical. Are back in the garden here. So I think we still have 5 minutes and then they have to do the homework, which is, of course, far more important than exposing the dream world we live in.
Yeah.
So we still have 5 minutes, but I was thinking to end on a positive note, besides your beautiful prayer you already uttered and expressed. Could we, and I'll put it simple in a few minutes, could we reverse engineer the false flag strategies and the problem reaction solution principle, where they create a problem they know they democratically they will not get implemented? They anticipate the reaction, so we know what the public opinion is thinking and how people will respond. So they will even go down on their knees and call us the Messiah because we offer the solution. And the solution is the problem you want to have installed and implemented in the first place, because that's it, right? Could we, now I'll put it simple, turn this around and use it to our advantage? Could we create our problem, which of course is our solution, and use it in, I don't know the answer to this question also, but I just want to put it out there for you and the rest of the world. Could we use our strong, heartfelt intention, coherence, our love, to actually overthrow this as a problem reaction solution scenario? So to actually almost like use their weapons, of course, no, because love is not a fighting war, but use their weapons against them for us. Could there be a way to use their own weapons, their own principles against them, and actually still thanking them and forgiving them, but hey, if you don't mind, implement the better, sustainable, loving world that we would see happen on this earth? Is there a way?
I'm sure there is, and I wish I knew more in detail how to do it, but I don't. And I'm very, very open to anyone who's listening. Please send me ideas. What I know is that the key in all of their control systems is fear. So I would say focus on becoming fearless is a major step. So that if they start shouting at you or pointing at you or whatever, that you stand in your own balance and do not become fearful. Many ways: meditating, listen to music, be around children, be around animals, whatever, so that your mind is not thrown out of balance. Also, every time that you listen to news, anything that scares you, please ask yourself, is it true? Is it true? Just because someone is saying that it's true, and if you believe it, who benefits from you believing it? So, and I would say also there's this beautiful thing on your remote.
Are they coming?
Yeah. There's this beautiful button on the remote. It's normally red and it says off. You can click that one and turn off the sewage that is entering into your living room. That is their weapon over you and your children. Please be aware of it. It's called TV programs, not by coincidence. They're programming you. So one way it would be to turn it off, because the world you're being presented through that black screen in front of you is not the same as if you look out the window, because more or less all of us will look out through the window and see a beautiful world. Then we will turn on the screen and we will be told you live in absolute hell and you need help, so let us control you. So take back the power by disengaging in their propaganda war. There is a full spectrum war at the moment against us. They are desperate They are desperate because I think that they've had this dark empire for so many years and been able to pull it off without us understanding. Now, people are standing and looking at the emperor saying, my God, he's naked. He's naked. It's game over. So what are they doing? They're very desperate. And so they're doing these desperate attempts to regain control and push us into this golden cage of lockdown, of digital grid, controlled grid. This is the big danger here. If they manage to roll out 5G, it could be game over, because then we're talking AI and a small group of people could control the masses. But until that's done, we are billions, they are a few thousands. So I would very much also advise people that 5G, when you see all of these towers coming up, who gave them building permission? Who gave them? Were you asked? Are you okay with this possible very advanced weaponry being there, prepared to fry you and your children? Is that something you would bend over and say, yes, I would love it, so that I can download a movie in 2.3 seconds, not considering that it will destroy everything around me? So nobody has been asked. These towers are just being put up there. Says who put them there? Who did give them permission? And a friend of mine in Sweden, he contacted the local authorities asking who have given permission to that. And she said, well, I think it was about 8 years ago, they gave up when it came to, it was too complicated, they said. So instead, these companies, Vodafone and all of these companies have been rolling this thing out, doing private deals with the property owners. So they pay them off and they erect these towers. I say, burn the fuckers down.
They're doing it. They are doing it.
That's weaponry that is aimed there, installed, prepared to, when they switch on that, it's game over for, like many of the symptoms when you see people fall over, if you can trust these videos, but people are not dying from pneumonia by just falling over. They do that from lack of air, from lack of oxygen. They just go boom.
Plus because also of the 5G frequency that's actually inhibiting oxygen to go into the cells.
But that's exactly. Yeah. That is what I'm referring to. Also, your water molecule starts boiling inside you. And this it's so close to be labeled military technology. I tell you, it is not by coincidence. 5G is horror, multiplied by horror, if that goes into place.
So we went from ecocide to genocide. So that's not the positive note to end with this talk. But if we go back to what we just discussed, the solution might be like the Germans. They went a bridge too far. I joke I have to translate my own sentence here. I joke with vaccination lectures. I say the vaccinated cat in the room is making such crazy jumps that even a blind man can see the false cat has been there all the time. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's so obvious that we have to do something.
Open your eyes and just see we're up against the ultimate enemy. I would call it pure evil, and it's not on. So do whatever. Use your inspiration. Use your creativity, but you have to see it. Define the problem, and it's in our face now. It's not down the road. It's here. We have to deal with it. And so be creative. I mean, maybe make cakes and whatever and squash them up into the camera. So I don't know, knit nice little socks that you can pull over these things, or talk to the people installing them, or the house owners, and say, listen, how much did they pay you? Okay, maybe I will pay you more, and then take down the crap so we don't destroy it, illegally. But let's get rid of it. It's not okay. And the thing is, as long as we don't react, that's our silent consent. And without that, they cannot do anything. It's the consent that they want from us. Yes. And John, I think both of us needs to go now. So
yes, I think we do, because my whole family is interrogating me.
Yeah, and I've got another interview here 3 minutes ago.
I want to thank you for your time. tell the other guy he will get 3 additional minutes from me. But I want to thank you for your time, Ole. And again, your website, lightonconspiracies.com. People can find a lot of important information there. So after this talk, please go there to investigate and do your own research, do your own work, and choose empowerment over all this fight over whatever kind of thing, but install a better world from out your own hearts and your own conditioning and programming. Let's put it this way. Choose the positive road. Thank you for your time. I'm signing off, and I wish you all the best. And probably we'll speak some more later in the near future. But that's my feeling. But
excellent. Thank you so much.
Have a good interview after this one.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Reaching out for someone, clearing all the skies, healing energies, purify, keep you in my prayers. It's my destiny. Feel caressed and safe, and the light is where we're gonna be. Sonny,